A question I keep seeing, whether it's in YouTube comments or on Twitter or in streams, is when are you going to do another DMZ lore video? When are you going to do another Warzone video? And I haven't done one for a long time, not since DMZ first came out, really. And the answer is I'm probably not going to do any more. And there's good reasons for that. So in this video, I'm going to explain why I'm not doing those lore videos anymore. If you like the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. It might be quite a short video, so, leave a comment too. That helps a bunch. Let me know what you think of the lore that is in DMZ and Warzone right now and what you would like them to do with it. So the short answer is that the lore just isn't very interesting. And that's not like a judgment on the quality of it or how good the writers are or anything like that. It's much more that I think they've decided consciously not to pursue this idea of there being a hidden story for Warzone and DMZ. And I think they might have made the right choice, to be honest. So back in Warzone 1, I did a video about the entire story for Warzone 1. And you can see that originally there wasn't really a story in terms of what was presented to the players, but there was all of this intel that was kind of hidden away in the game files, and eventually we got it. We got it like the fortnightly intel that came out, and it started off doing this thing of kind of explaining why there was a conflict in Verdansk, what was happening there, some of the different people that were involved, and then it kind of went off the rails. It kind of ran out of steam. There was this story that was explaining everything that was happening with, arms dealers moving stuff around in secret and this confusion about what was really happening with Armistice, etc. It was like not great, but kind of interesting. And then they started trying to get Black Ops involved, and you had like Woods being talked about, and then you had all of the weird stuff with Adler going on. And then they started trying to get World War II involved with Butcher, and it got super weird. And then we ended up with like Terminator in it and Godzilla. It went completely off the rails. Do check out my video where I explained everything that happened in Warzone 1, but it got really, really bizarre very quickly. Then when DMZ came out and Warzone 2, we got another bunch of lore where it kind of seemed to be explaining who some of the characters were. So I did a video about who the chemist was and why he's the way he is. And then I did another one about what happened to that big explosion in Rohan Oil. There's actually a backstory to that that's kind of interesting. It's just flavor text, it's just something that kind of makes you feel like this world is a little bit more of a real place rather than just a game map. But that was kind of the extent of it. It was never very complex. It was never very deep. It wasn't like exploring themes or anything like that. It was more like, oh, cool, there's a bit more to this. Since then, though, they've added a ton more lore. There's so many more notes. There's a bunch of other little stories, especially in Al Mazrah. There's tons of little stories just explaining, what happened to different families, different people who were working in the city. How did they escape? What was going on? There was kind of a lot of flavor text like that. And I didn't do any more videos on that just because they weren't particularly interesting. There wasn't kind of enough meat to them to make an entire video about them, to be honest. But then when we got Building 21, there was a bunch of lore in there, but it was even less interesting because really all of it, there's like notes from different workers, people who were in the building, guards and stuff like that. All of it was really just saying what Building 21 was. And it wasn't like there was some amazing revelation in there. It was just, hey, this is a secret underground bunker where there's experiments going on and they've gone wrong and a load of people have died. And that's kind of, if I asked anybody who's played Building 21 once to sort of guess what that place is, that's probably what they would say. So all of the lore in Building 21 was pretty much just kind of very superficial, very obvious stuff. And I'm not really sure what purpose that served at all. It was just kind of boring, to be honest. I think that was a bit of a shame because I think there's an opportunity for them to do something, really creepy there. They could have started like leaning on the supernatural element of Call of Duty a bit. We've had zombies in Warzone 1. They could have started going towards stuff like that. But for whatever reason, they chose not to. And it was just, the boring, hey, there's scientists working on this poison gas. Oh no, it got out and killed a load of people. Which has kind of been a story within Call of Duty for what feels like decades at this point, and they just keep on doing it again and again. And it's never got more interesting. There's never saying anything. It's just, this is a thing that happened, and that's kind of it. With Koshai Complex, we got even more notes. It's a bigger place, so there's even more lore. But all of the lore in Koshai Complex seems to be either like the Building 21 style, hey, like we're building a big complex of tunnels underneath Al Mazrah, and there's like secret experiments going on, but some of them have gone wrong, and like there's this gas that's kind of hurts you or makes you go crazy, but is also radioactive, so avoid that. Or, you know, with the bosses, all of their notes are just saying like, we told you to guard these rooms, so make sure you do that. And then, you know, they're guarding those rooms. So just very descriptive stuff that I don't think is very interesting to anyone. Or there's some stuff, and this is where it gets to the conscious design decision, that really helps the gameplay more than anything. So there's one where it's just, oh, you idiot, you dropped the keys on the floor again. Like, that's where they're going to be. So then it tells the players that's where you find the keys to the factory. Or there's ones in Alpha Cluster that talk about using the R4 detector to find hidden messages that will let you open up a door, because that's how you open up the door to get one of the pieces of the blueprint. So there's stuff like that that's kind of helping players along. And I'm all for that. I think that is a brilliant idea. I'm really completely behind the idea of helping players within the game rather than them having to rely on YouTube guides and streamers and stuff like that. I think it's really cool if people can work stuff out in the game because something makes sense. So the question comes back to, why did they stop doing the more interesting stuff? Why did they stop doing that kind of flavor text and trying to make an elaborate story, a sort of hidden story for Warzone DMZ? And I think the answer is that it was just never very good. Like, it was never a super interesting story. Call of Duty hasn't really had many interesting stories. Arguably, the original Modern Warfare trilogy was kind of okay, and Black Ops 1 and 2 were kind of interesting. But since then, it's never been particularly good. It's never been great. You know, it's never been one of those top 10 stories of all time kind of things that you would see on a list. And the Warzone story was never that interesting. And the reason for that is, I assume, and I don't know this, I'm speculating, I assume that the gameplay always comes first. That, you know, designers design the gameplay, they work on the maps, they decorate the maps, artists work on it. And then I think all of the writing of this lore and stuff like that, this intel, comes much, much later. Like, this is kind of stuff that is fit around what's already there. So it's not like a writer can say, hey, I've got this cool idea for a story. Can you make like this kind of diorama within this room, this kind of environmental storytelling? Because if it doesn't serve the gameplay, I think the designers, the artists, are probably working to quite a strict budget in terms of how many props they can put in, how many unique textures they can put in and stuff like that, that there's very little that they can do. So instead, most of the writing is like, hey, this is the map, it already exists. Can you kind of come up with some text to explain why things are the way they are? And they've kind of done the best they can. But none of it matters because most players aren't ever even going to look at the notes. I would argue that most people who play DMZ probably don't even realize that you can select the notes and press X to read them. Like, they just pick them up and sell them because some of them are worth some money. So that was kind of the long answer, that I'm not that interested in the lore that exists because it's not that interesting. And I did go into a lot of depth in this in today's podcast. So if you want to listen to that, you can do, talking about, you know, my experience as an English teacher and having a literature degree, and how like stories are the only thing that exists. The only thing that exists is the bit that was written. And when people want to start adding fan fiction in and start asking questions like, is Makarov behind all of this? Maybe Woods is involved. Maybe this is a shadow company thing. All of that is just fan fiction. It doesn't exist. The only thing that does exist is a story that was written. Characters don't exist. They're not real. So all of this stuff about why did this happen? It doesn't matter. You know, it just doesn't matter. If you want to see more information about that, check out today's podcast. But if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you for the next one. Goodbye.